All right, folks, gather round. Let me tell you something about Niccolo Machiavelli that your college professor probably glossed over while droning on about Renaissance politics. Sure, the guy wrote The Prince back in the 1500s, and yeah, his name's become shorthand for being a scheming SOB. But here's the thing, and I've been kicking around this planet long enough to know, old Niccolo wasn't just talking about running kingdoms. He was talking about human nature, period. And human nature, my friends, doesn't change much whether you're dealing with warring Italian city-states or trying to figure out why your buddy from college suddenly stopped returning your texts. You see, I've spent the better part of 6 decades watching people in boardrooms, at backyard barbecues, through 3 marriages, don't ask, and countless friendships that came and went like seasons. And I'll tell you what, Machiavelli's insights hit different when you've got some miles on the odometer. These kids today, with their dating apps and social media drama, they think they've invented complicated relationships. Hell, they don't know complicated until they've tried to navigate a family reunion where half the relatives aren't speaking to the other half because of some Facebook post about vaccines. Machiavelli wrote, "It must be considered that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle than to initiate a new order of things." Brother, ain't that the truth when it comes to starting over with someone? Whether it's rebuilding trust after your partner finds out about that poker game you said was a business meeting, or trying to salvage a friendship after you accidentally liked your ex's Instagram photo from 2019. Starting fresh in any relationship is like trying to build a house on quicksand while people throw rocks at you. And here's where Machiavelli really nails it. The main foundations of every state, new states as well as ancient or composite ones, are good laws and good arms. You cannot have good laws without good arms, and where there are good arms, good laws inevitably follow. Now, before you start thinking I'm advocating for bringing a baseball bat to your next couples therapy session, hear me out. In relationships, your good arms are boundaries, self-respect, and the backbone to walk away when someone's treating you like yesterday's newspaper. Your good laws are the mutual respect, honest communication, and shared values that make any relationship work. I've watched too many good people, hell, I've been one of them, try to build relationships on nothing but good intentions and wishful thinking. Let me save you some heartache. Kindness without strength is just being a doormat with better marketing. You need both the velvet glove and the iron fist, as they say. These millennials and Gen Z kids are dealing with a whole new level of complexity that would have made Machiavelli's head spin. Ghosting, cancel culture, performative authenticity. It's like they're playing relationship chess on a board that changes rules every 5 minutes. But you know what? The fundamentals haven't changed. People still want to be respected, they still test boundaries, and they still respond to strength wrapped in wisdom. Machiavelli's pragmatic lens isn't just relevant in 2025, it's essential survival gear.
Chapter 1. Real talk about pragmatism in love and friendship. Now let's get down to brass tacks. When I talk about Machiavellian pragmatism in relationships, I'm not suggesting you turn into some cold-blooded calculator treating people like chess pieces. That's amateur hour. Real pragmatism, the kind that actually works, is about being smart enough to see situations clearly and flexible enough to adapt when the game changes. Machiavelli said, "Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times." In relationship terms, this means you don't keep using the same playbook when the field conditions change. I learned this the hard way in my second marriage. My ex-wife went back to school for her master's degree when she was 42. Did I adapt to her new schedule, her stress levels, her need for intellectual conversation about subjects I knew jack squat about? Nope. I kept expecting Tuesday night dinners and weekend golf like nothing had changed. Guess how that worked out for me? A pragmatic approach means you size up what's actually happening, not what you wish was happening. Your college buddy who used to party until 3 a.m. now has 2 kids and a mortgage. Your girlfriend who used to be spontaneous now needs to plan date nights 2 weeks in advance because of her new promotion. Your mom who used to call every Sunday now texts because arthritis makes holding the phone painful. Adapt or watch these relationships drift away like leaves in the wind. Here's where it gets interesting. Machiavelli also said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." This hits home hard when I think about all the relationship problems I've seen people ignore until they exploded. That friend who's been subtly cutting you down in group settings, address it now, not after 6 months of building resentment. Your partner's sudden interest in taking a break from date nights. Time for a conversation, not denial and hope. I remember watching my neighbor Jake, good guy, heart of gold, brain of mush when it came to reading people, deal with his girlfriend's passive-aggressive behavior for 2 years. She'd make little digs about his career, roll her eyes when he talked about his hobbies, show up late to everything they planned. Instead of calling it out early, Jake kept making excuses, thinking it would get better. It didn't. By the time he finally grew a spine, the relationship was deader than disco. A wise man would have had that uncomfortable conversation after the 3rd eye roll, not the 300th. Let's talk real-world application here. Say you've got a friend who constantly cancels plans at the last minute. The emotional response is to get hurt, make excuses for them, or passive-aggressively start doing the same thing back. The pragmatic, Machiavellian response, you stop making plans that depend on their reliability. Instead of dinner reservations, suggest meeting for coffee, where cancellation doesn't cost you money. Instead of buying concert tickets together, go with someone more dependable. You're not punishing them, you're adapting to their demonstrated behavior patterns. Or consider modern dating, which is like trying to navigate a minefield while blindfolded. A pragmatic approach means setting clear intentions from the start. If you're looking for something serious, don't waste time with someone who doesn't want to put labels on things. If you want casual fun, don't date someone who's shopping for wedding venues on Pinterest. This isn't about being harsh, it's about being honest with yourself and others about what you're actually doing here. The beauty of Machiavellian pragmatism is that it's ultimately about effectiveness and sustainability. You're not trying to manipulate people into being someone they're not. You're working with who they actually are, making smart moves based on reality rather than fantasy. And here's the kicker. When you approach relationships this way, with clear eyes and flexible strategies, you actually end up being more generous, not less. Because you're not constantly disappointed by unmet expectations, you can appreciate people for what they actually bring to the table. That's the difference between wisdom and wishful thinking, folks. And in a world where everyone's performing their best life on social media while their real relationships fall apart behind the scenes, a little Machiavellian pragmatism might just be the antidote we all need.
Chapter 2: The Art of Influence, when playing the game isn't playing dirty. All right, here's where things get spicy, and I can already see some of you squirming in your seats. We're going to talk about manipulation, and before you start clutching your pearls and muttering about toxic behavior, hear me out. Because if you think you've never manipulated anyone, you're either lying to yourself or you've been living in a cave with no human contact. Let me paint you a picture. Last week, my daughter calls me up. She's 35, successful lawyer, sharp as a tack. And she says, "Dad, I really think Mom would love to hear from you about her garden. She's been working so hard on those tomatoes." Now, was my daughter being manipulative? You bet your ass she was. She knows her mother and I have been tiptoeing around each other since our divorce 10 years ago, and she also knows I've been feeling guilty about missing her mom's birthday last month. So she's nudging me toward making a gesture that'll make everyone feel better. Is that wrong? Hell no! That's emotional intelligence wrapped in a little strategic thinking. Machiavelli gets a bad rap for supposedly saying the ends justify the means. But here's the thing. He was talking about survival in a world where getting it wrong meant getting your head chopped off. In relationships, the stakes are usually lower, but the principle still applies. Sometimes a little strategic maneuvering serves everyone involved. I've watched this play out in countless ways over the years. My buddy Jim's wife always wanted to host Thanksgiving, but Jim hated the chaos and expense. Instead of flat out refusing and starting World War III, he'd strategically mention how much his sister enjoyed hosting, how great her kitchen was for big meals, how the kids loved playing in her backyard. By Christmas, his wife would be suggesting they go to his sister's place instead. Manipulation? Sure.
but everyone ended up happier. His wife felt like it was her idea, the sister got to play hostess, Jim got his peace and quiet, and the family stayed together. Here's where Machiavelli really nails it. Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. Now, before you start thinking I'm advocating for pathological lying, let's unpack this. Sometimes deception is just tact. When your friend asks if they like their new haircut that looks like they stuck their finger in an electrical socket, you say it's interesting or bold. That's not evil manipulation, that's preserving a friendship and their self-esteem while avoiding unnecessary cruelty. The restaurant example from your original text hits home because I've done this dance 1,000 times. You know you want Thai food, but instead of just announcing it, you casually mention how you're in the mood for something with flavor, or how that new Thai place has great reviews. You're influencing the outcome without being a dictator about it. Everyone feels like they had input, but you get your pad Thai. Win-win! But here's where it gets tricky. And this is where I've seen good people go wrong. The line between influence and manipulation often comes down to respect and reciprocity. When my ex-brother-in-law used to guilt-trip my sister into lending him money by talking about how family should help family, that wasn't strategic influence, that was exploitation. He was using her emotions against her best interests repeatedly with no intention of reciprocating or changing his behavior. I've watched this play out in the dating world too, especially with these younger generations who've grown up performing themselves online. They know how to curate their image, how to craft the perfect text response, how to use social media to send messages without actually communicating. Some of this is just smart, knowing when to text back immediately versus waiting a bit, understanding that certain photos send certain signals. But when you're manufacturing an entire personality to hook someone, you're not building a relationship, you're running a con game that'll eventually blow up in your face. The ethics really do depend on intent and impact, just like your text says. I remember when my youngest was going through a rough patch in high school. Grades slipping, attitude getting worse, spending too much time with kids who were clearly bad news. Instead of laying down the law and risking him going completely rebellious, I started strategically involving him in activities with better influences. I'd suggest we help his cousin with his car. The cousin was a good kid, mechanically inclined. Or I'd buy tickets to games where I knew some of his more motivated classmates would be. Was I manipulating his social circle? Absolutely. Was I doing it because I cared about his future and wanted to guide him toward better choices? You bet I was. Did it work? He's now 28, married to a wonderful woman he met through that cousin, and running his own successful business. The key is asking yourself, am I doing this to help or to help myself? Am I respecting the other person's autonomy even while I'm trying to influence their decision? And am I willing to live with the consequences if they find out what I'm doing? Because here's the thing Machiavelli understood that a lot of people miss. Influence is a tool, and like any tool, it can build or destroy depending on how you use it. A hammer can build a house or bash someone's head in. The tool isn't moral or immoral, the person using it is.
Chapter 3. Walking the Tightrope, When Smart Strategy Becomes Dirty Pool. Now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of this whole discussion, folks. Because if you've been nodding along so far thinking, yeah, this makes sense, you're about to hit the question that keeps most decent people up at night. When does being smart cross over into being a snake? I'll tell you something that'll make you uncomfortable. I've been on both sides of this line, and the view looks different depending on where you're standing. Machiavelli wrote, "A wise ruler ought never to keep faith when by doing so it would be against his interests." Now that sounds cold as hell when you read it on paper, but let me tell you how it played out in my own life. 23 years ago, I had a business partner, let's call him Rick, who was also one of my closest friends. We'd known each other since high school, been best man at each other's weddings, the whole 9 yards. But Rick had a problem with the bottle, and it was starting to affect our business. Contracts were getting missed, clients were getting ignored, and I was covering for him because, hell, that's what friends do, right? But here's where Machiavelli's brutal honesty comes in. My loyalty to Rick was destroying the business that fed both our families, plus the 12 people we employed. So I had a choice: keep faith with my friend and watch everything we'd built crumble, or protect the larger good even if it meant breaking that personal bond. I gave Rick 3 months to get help. When he didn't, I bought him out. Legally, fairly, but without his consent or enthusiasm. Was I pragmatic? Absolutely. Was it manipulation? Rick certainly thought so, and he hasn't spoken to me since. But those 12 employees kept their jobs, my family kept our house, and Rick eventually got the wake-up call he needed to get sober. Sometimes being pragmatic means making the hard choice that serves the greater good, even when it feels like betrayal to someone you care about. But here's where it gets slippery, and this is where I've seen too many smart people lose their souls. Machiavelli also said, "Politics have no relation to morals." That's a dangerous road, my friends, because once you start thinking that winning is all that matters, you become the villain in someone else's story real quick. I learned this lesson the hard way in my first marriage. I was so focused on being right in our arguments, so determined to win every point, that I forgot we were supposed to be on the same team. I'd use her insecurities against her, bring up past mistakes to shut down current complaints, and twist conversations until she was apologizing for things that weren't even her fault. Was I effective? Sure, in the short term. Did I destroy the woman I claimed to love and the marriage I thought I was protecting? You bet I did. The difference between pragmatism and manipulation comes down to this. Pragmatism seeks the best outcome for everyone involved, even if the path isn't perfect. Manipulation seeks the best outcome for you, period, and everyone else can go to hell. Let me give you a crystal clear example. Remember Iago from Shakespeare's Othello? That bastard is the poster child for manipulation done wrong. He plants seeds of doubt in Othello's mind about his wife's faithfulness, not because he's trying to help anyone or solve a problem, but because he's pissed off about getting passed over for promotion. Every move Iago makes serves his ego and his revenge, and innocent people die because of it. That's manipulation at its most toxic, pure selfishness dressed up as strategy. Now contrast that with something I witnessed just last month. My neighbor's wife has been struggling with anxiety and depression since their second kid was born. She refuses to consider therapy because she's convinced it means she's broken or failing as a mother. Instead of just accepting this or pushing her directly, which wasn't working, her husband started talking about how his buddy's wife found this great therapist who specializes in helping couples communicate better during stressful life transitions. He framed it as something they could do together, a way to strengthen their partnership rather than fix her problems. Was he being completely straightforward? Nope. Did he know she'd be more likely to say yes if it felt like a team effort rather than an intervention? Absolutely. But his intent was helping his wife get the support she needed while preserving her dignity, and the outcome has been a stronger marriage and a healthier mom. That's pragmatic influence done right. The line blurs when you start using people's vulnerabilities against their best interests. I've seen parents guilt-trip their adult children into staying close to home by playing up health scares or financial difficulties. I've watched friends use shared secrets as leverage to keep someone in an unhealthy relationship. I've seen dating app users craft entire fake personas to attract partners they'd never have a shot at with as themselves. Here's the test I use now, after screwing it up enough times to know better. Am I doing this because I genuinely believe it serves both of our interests, even if the other person can't see it right now? Or am I doing this because I want something and I'm willing to use whatever tools I have to get it? The first one might be pragmatic, even if it's uncomfortable. The second one is manipulation, plain and simple, and it'll come back to bite you in the ass every single time. Because here's what Machiavelli understood but didn't always say out loud. Trust is the ultimate currency in relationships, and once you've spent it, it's damn near impossible to earn back. For you younger folks navigating this digital age where everyone's performing authenticity while hiding behind screens, this is especially tricky territory. But the fundamentals remain the same. Know your intent, consider the impact, and remember that the smartest long-term strategy is usually building genuine trust, not exploiting temporary advantages.
Chapter 4. Playing the Long Game. Machiavellian Love and Friendship That Actually Works. All right,
let's bring this whole thing home with some real talk about how to apply Machiavellian thinking to your actual relationships without turning into a complete sociopath. Because here's what I've learned after 6 decades of making mistakes, fixing them, and occasionally getting it right. The best strategy is always the one that makes everyone stronger, not just you. Machiavelli had this brilliant insight that cuts right to the heart of modern relationships. Because friendships that are obtained by payments and not by greatness or nobility of mind may indeed be earned, but they are not secured, and in time of need cannot be relied upon. Brother, if that doesn't describe half the connections people make today, I don't know what does. I see this everywhere now. People collecting friends like Pokemon cards, racking up followers and connections based on what they can get out of each other. I've got a nephew who's always bragging about his network, but when he lost his job last year, half these so-called friends disappeared faster than free beer at a tailgate party. Why? Because those relationships were built on transactions, not genuine mutual respect and care. Real friendship, real love, the kind that lasts through job losses, health scares, and midlife crises, requires what Machiavelli called greatness or nobility of mind. That's not some fancy way of saying you need to be perfect. It means you show up for people not because of what they can do for you, but because of who they are. And here's the kicker. When you operate that way, people remember. They stick around. They have your back when the chips are down. But, and this is a big but, that doesn't mean being a pushover. Machiavelli also said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Now, before you start practicing your intimidating glare in the mirror, let's talk about what fear means in healthy relationships. It's not about making people scared of you. It's about making sure they respect your boundaries, your time, and your worth. I learned this lesson with my daughter when she was in college. Sweet kid, heart of gold, but she had this habit of calling me every time she had a crisis, usually at 2 a.m., usually involving some drama with her roommates or her boyfriend. Now, I love my daughter more than life itself, but after months of losing sleep over problems that somehow magically resolved themselves by morning, I had to make a change. Instead of being the 24/7 emotional emergency room, I told her, "Honey, I'm here for real emergencies. Health, safety, genuine crises. But for everything else, let's talk during reasonable hours when we can both think clearly and have a real conversation." Was she happy about it? Hell no. Did it improve our relationship and teach her better problem-solving skills? Absolutely. Sometimes love requires setting boundaries that initially feel uncomfortable. In friendships, this might mean telling that chronically late friend, "I value our time together, but I need you to respect my schedule too. If you're more than 15 minutes late without calling, I'm going to leave." It's not mean. It's strategic communication that serves both of you. They learn to be more considerate, and you don't build up resentment that eventually explodes and ruins the friendship. The key to avoiding manipulation while being strategic is transparency. And I mean real transparency, not the fake kind where you say all the right words while hiding your actual intentions. When I was dating after my divorce, I was upfront from the start. Look, I'm not looking to get married again anytime soon. I want companionship, I want someone to travel with and share experiences with, but I'm not shopping for a stepmom for my kids or planning joint retirement accounts. Some women appreciated the honesty and were looking for the same thing. Others wanted something more serious and moved on. Did this approach limit my options? Sure. Did it save everyone involved a lot of heartache and wasted time? Absolutely. That's strategic thinking that serves everyone. Being clear about what you want so people can make informed decisions about whether they want to be part of it. Here's my practical playbook for Machiavellian relationships that actually work. First, communicate like an adult, not a mind reader. Don't drop hints and expect people to decode your needs. If you want something, ask for it. If something bothers you, say so.
I've watched too many relationships die from accumulated misunderstandings that could have been prevented with 5 minutes of honest conversation. Second, always check your motives. Before you make any strategic move, ask yourself, is this going to make our relationship stronger, or am I just trying to get my way? If it's the latter, pump the brakes and find a better approach. Third, invest in mutual growth. The strongest relationships are the ones where both people are becoming better versions of themselves. Support your partner's career goals even when they conflict with your schedule. Encourage your friend's new hobby even if you think it's boring as hell. When you genuinely want the best for someone else, they feel it and they return the favor. I see these younger generations struggling with this balance, especially with social media adding layers of complexity that didn't exist when I was dating. But the fundamentals remain the same. Be honest about what you want, respect what other people want, and remember that the goal isn't to win, it's to build something that lasts. The smartest Machiavellian move in any relationship is to make the other person glad they know you, not relieved when they leave the room. Do that consistently, and you'll have more genuine connections than you know what to do with. And that, my friends, is how you win the long game.
Conclusion, the bottom line on love, strategy, and not being a jackass. Look, we've covered a lot of ground here, and if your head's spinning a little, that's normal. Machiavelli wasn't exactly writing self-help books. The guy was trying to figure out how to survive in a world where making the wrong political move could get you exiled or executed. But damn if his insights don't cut right through the BS of modern relationships like a hot knife through butter. Here's what old Nicolaio understood that most people today are still figuring out. One change always leaves the way open for the establishment of others. Every choice you make in a relationship, whether you're being pragmatic or manipulative, honest or strategic, creates ripples that keep spreading. Treat someone poorly once, and they'll be waiting for you to do it again. Show up consistently with integrity, and they'll start trusting you with the important stuff. I've seen this play out over and over again. That business partner I had to buy out, 20 years later, he got sober, rebuilt his life, and actually reached out to thank me for making the hard call when he couldn't. Those ripples from one difficult decision kept spreading until they came back around as gratitude. On the flip side, I've watched people make one selfish, manipulative choice that poisoned relationships for decades. But here's where Machiavelli really nails it for our current moment. There is no other way to guard yourself against flattery than by making men understand that telling you the truth will not offend you. In a world where everyone's curating their online persona and telling each other what they want to hear, the person who can handle the truth and create space for others to be honest becomes incredibly valuable. You want to know the secret to lasting relationships in an age of ghosting and performative authenticity? Be the person who can have the hard conversations without falling apart. Be someone who says what they mean and means what they say. Be the friend who'll tell you when you're being an idiot and the partner who can hear criticism without turning it into World War III. For you millennials dealing with the pressure of having it all figured out by 30, and you Gen Z folks trying to build real connections in a digital world that rewards shallow performance, Machiavelli's challenge is simple but not easy. Be smart, but don't be a sociopath. Use strategy to build something that lasts, not just to get what you want in the moment. The old Italian was right about one thing. Relationships are about power dynamics, influence, and strategic thinking. But he was also smart enough to know that the best long-term strategy is usually building genuine trust and mutual respect. Cold calculations might win you battles, but warm connections win you the war. So take his pragmatism, season it with some basic human decency, and you've got a recipe for relationships that can weather whatever life throws at you. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to find our people and hold on to them without driving each other crazy in the process. If this old-school approach to relationships resonated with you, if you're tired of the same recycled dating advice and friendship platitudes that don't work in the real world, then you've found your people. Hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started. Every week, I'm breaking down the lessons that philosophers, strategists, and wise guys throughout history have to teach us about navigating modern life. We're talking Marcus Aurelius on handling difficult people, Sun Tzu on workplace politics, Aristotle on building character that actually matters. These aren't dusty academic lectures, this is practical wisdom from people who understood human nature at its core. You'll get the kind of insights that come from decades of making mistakes, learning from them, and figuring out what actually works when the rubber hits the road. No sugarcoating, no feel-good nonsense that falls apart the first time someone tests your boundaries. Just straight talk about building relationships, careers, and a life you can be proud of. Because here's the thing, the problems we're dealing with today aren't really new. Different technology, same human drama. The ancient Greeks had relationship problems, medieval kings dealt with workplace politics, and Renaissance thinkers like Machiavelli were figuring out how to influence people without destroying everything in the process. So if you're ready to learn from the masters, to get advice that's been battle-tested across centuries instead of focus group last week, then welcome to the club. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let's dive deeper into the timeless wisdom that can actually help you navigate this crazy modern world. Trust me, your future self will thank you for it.